Welcome. Welcome to Pacific Unitarian Church on May 23rd. It's good to see Mike. You're proceeding along in your internship program for bass very well. I think you're going to pass. There's a few long-standing traditions here at PUC. One, it's good to see the pandemic hasn't changed our pace of people coming in late. So I'm glad that nothing's changed. It's actually good to see the buzz of people coming in. It feels good, and the music was great, right? Yeah. So we have, I'll introduce our guest in a minute. He was our adult ed speaker yesterday. Next week we have I think it's a really nice service of memorializing about 8 or 9 people. We're going to have images of folks who've passed away for the last 2 years up on the board. I'm going to do a little eulogy for for everyone, and then we're going to, afterwards, we have a tile dedication, and it's either going to be 3 tiles, or if Erica Sweets diligently worked away to make some more tiles, we might have as many as 9 people memorialized because we missed a year last year. So there's that. There's a lot cooking here back to life. We're very much engaged in an exciting debate opportunity around the Spirit Grant, which I hope we accept, and that's going to give us another employee next year, so we're gearing up towards that. We're going to have a little skit about anti-racism today. We got a book group. I think of it as Renee's book group, or Robin's book group. I always confuse those two. And the next one, so it's Interior Chinatown. If you want to jump in on that book group, it's not till June 15th, so you have time. It's a little family drama set in a Chinatown with all the fixins. So. What else? Let's see. We're gonna open up board positions in a way we hadn't before. We normally sort of picked a slate, which we have sort of picked a bunch of people to make sure we have enough board members. But if anybody wants to run for the board or come on board meetings, you're welcome to do that. We're being as transparent as we can be. Thursday afternoons have become this sort of popular Thursday at noon pizza day that Kelly has initiated, and we've got almost a dozen people coming on a weekly basis. So if you identify yourself as a senior, and not the kind of senior Mike is at El Camino, but the kind of senior that most of us are, come on over. Let's see. I'm going to light our chalice words. These are our chalice words from Elizabeth Harding. It says, "We Unitarians don't drink from our chalice. Instead, we use it to hold the flame. The circle of the chalice keeps the fire small. The flame doesn't blind us, it doesn't burn us," she says. "It gives us light so we can see all the different things in the universe, even the invisible ones, because of Unitarian Universalist flame is a light of learning." And we'll be doing some of that today. So. Yesterday we had the formal conclusion to our adult ed program on death and dying, and we will invite into our pulpit today Reverend Drake, who is a UU himself and an ordained minister. He is also the National Medical Outreach Manager for Compassionate and Care, which is formerly the Hemlock Society. You might be familiar with that. This is the leading nationwide group that fights for people to have the right to die with dignity, and very much been supported by UUs from the very beginning, if I'm not mistaken. Roberts has been a member at the Marin Church in UU, up there in Marin, which he thinks is a lot like our church, which is nice. He has a master's in divinity, like I said. He's got a master's in conflict resolution. He is a hospice and palliative care chaplain. So, since we couldn't find anybody appropriate to come talk about caring principles at the end of your life and being able to cultivate for yourself a caring presence to those in these hardest of all of our spots, almost choking up just saying it, he's going to give us some tips and give us a little bit of a talk around how we are with people in their end stages. So there's all of that and more. And all of that comes without a manual. And I'm going to turn it over to Severin and maybe Mike, and we're going to hear a hymn, and then we're going to hear a skit.
Comfort me.
Comfort me. don't sing, but want to.
Here we go. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul.
As you see before you, we have Judy and Barbara who are going to share with us just a mini little skit we came up with talking about some of the quiet ways that, racism sets waves of change in our society in ways that we need to work our way to undo. So I turn it over to our poker players, Barbara and Judy.
Hey, Barbara. I just don't understand all this talk about racism and white supremacy. I'm not a racist. I didn't own slaves. Why is it my problem?
Well, Judy, it's not your fault, and no one should feel guilty. Whoops. It's not your fault, and no one should feel guilty. Think of our society as an old house built by our ancestors with the best tools and technology they had available at the time. It is now clearly falling apart, not serving the needs of the many who live in it. We inherited the house, so even though we're not to blame, we are responsible for fixing it and making sure that all who live within its walls are safe and cared for.
Okay, but my rooms are safe. I feel fine and comfortable. Why are these other people my responsibility?
Good question. Our house has major infrastructure issues. All the rooms are not yours, but the foundation is supporting the entire house. Your rooms will fall if the foundation is not fixed. Our UU values call us to consider the interdependence of all living things. Our Black, Indigenous people, and of color roommates also deserve to live in a nice house, in nice rooms. We must fix the foundation together so our house will continue to stand.
Okay, that sort of makes some sense. It's an analogy I can understand.
Well, why don't you sign up for one of our anti-racist discussion groups here at PUC? I really did learn a lot from it.
Well, I'm not. That is the transformations team version of QVC. I'm going to invite Robert down. Any of the kids can come forward and come. We're going to try to do a little rug thing, see if you can space yourselves out. We're going to need children to come down, just like in the old days, but keep your distance from another. Don't, and I'm going to come down and hold his book for him if that might be helpful for us, okay? So.
As long as I can read it, too.
All right.
Let's do.
We haven't done this in too long, right?
I'm coming down here. Here, I'll hold it. Thank you.
Now you're out.
Hi, everyone.
Now you're out of camera view.
Oh, am I? Oh, jeez. Okay.
You're going to find us? All right, go back.
This is kind of hard in my pre-COVID suit pants. They just don't fit the way they used to. Hi, everyone. Children of all ages, especially you in this circle. Nice to meet you. So this book, let's start with the front here. This is Where'd My Giggle Go? And this is by Max Lucado, illustrated by Sarah Jennings. Start here, next page. Okay. I woke up this morning with a frown on my face. I looked for my smile, looked all over the place. I looked high, I looked low, I looked to and fro, but I could not find it. Where'd my giggle go?
It was better in dress rehearsal.
I ran to the circus and called out to the clown. What do I do? All I have is a frown. Keep looking, he said. It's somewhere, I know, but I could not find it. Where'd my giggle go?
It's a mystery.
But a fun one. I ran down the street to tell my grandpa, I'm missing my happy. I don't want it to stop. Do you know where it is? He said, I don't know. We couldn't find it. Where'd my giggle go? Jim? I felt kind of cranky. I felt kind of sad. I can't tell you why, but I even felt bad. I stared at the ground. I told no one. It wasn't much fun. Where'd my giggle go? I crawled under the fence. I looked right behind it. I looked for my laugh, but I couldn't find it. Hands would not clap. My smile would not show. Oh my, what to do? Where'd my giggle go? I went to the baker and looked under his hat. I stuck my head in his frosting-filled vat. I looked in the cookies and searched through the dough. No luck, none at all. Where'd my giggle go?
Betty finds it.
Is it inside my pocket or maybe my shoe? Behind my left ear? I needed a clue. I looked in the mirror. I looked head to toe. Wasn't there either. Where'd my giggle go? No giggles, no fun. No fun, no sleep. No giggle is not the best way to be. I made a decision that was really quite simple. What popped in my head was a cure for no giggle. I'll help others be happy, I said right out loud. I'll give smiles, I'll give hugs. I really felt proud. I began with my brother. He had just lost his cat. I told him, we'll find her. We did just that. A girl had a frisbee, but no one to catch it. Throw it my way, I said. I'll be happy to fetch it. I helped Mom wash the dishes and gave my dog a good tickle. And what do you know? I wanted to giggle. I put my hand on my mouth and reshaped my lips. I thought of some songs that made my feet skip. I waved at a bird, gave a ball a good throw. It began to come back. Where'd my giggle go? It had left for a while. It had gone far away. I told it, I miss you. Please come out and play. The next thing you know, I felt something wiggle from deep, deep within. I started to giggle. I snickered and chuckled and let out a snort. I cackled and chortled. Do you know the sort? I started to shake. I started to jiggle. Stuff like that happens when you find your giggle. I let out a hoot and skipped down the street. It felt good to feel good. It really felt neat. I beat on the drums and pulled out my fiddle. What a good day it was. A great day to giggle. Your giggle may go. If it does, that's okay. It's never too far to come back. Just help others be happy, and little by little, you'll soon have it back. You'll soon have your giggle. Yeah. Thank you.
We're going to let our kids go outside. I'm going to join in a minute, and we've got a little game we're going to play.
Thanks.
Yeah. Someone can keep an eye on them for 2 minutes. That'd be great. Lots of other joys and concerns. Obviously, the weather's nice and warm, and I think we're grateful for that. And okay, Robert's going to lead us in prayer, and I'm going to escape to go hang with the kids. Thank you.
Now I'll be able to see through my foggy glasses. I'm prone to short prayers. So I ask for blessings on all of us from wherever each of us gets our blessings. And I ask that those blessings and that our voices and intentions join together to bring those blessings in the form of comfort to those suffering, including ourselves, in the form of health, in the form of a sense of connectedness to the love that imbues us all in our very existence, in these bodies. Amen. So today I'm taking my Compassion Choices hat off. Thank you, Gloria, for bringing me here. And today I wear my hospice chaplain hat. I want to say good morning, thank you. It's an honor to be here. This place really does feel so much like my old congregation and space in Marin, UU Marin. It's a real pleasure to be here. I came that close to wearing blue jeans today and not wear these pre-COVID pants because I also knew I would probably be getting down on the floor. Well, my offering today is the spiritual care principle of caring presence. I'll begin with some examples of my failure. Excuse me, I'm going to grab my water. I'm going to begin with some examples of my failure. I hope this will be a good place to start our exploration of this core spiritual care principle. Can you hear me okay? All names have been changed. A 61-year-old trauma survivor was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer a few years back. I showed up in my initial interactions with her as a seasoned and realistic hospice and palliative care professional, and her big brother. By the way, I will get emotional. Don't worry about me, I'm comfortable with it. 2 weeks after her diagnosis at the beginning of treatment, she told me, through our younger sister, that she would rather I not call her anymore. It was hard enough, she said, without Bobby putting me in my grave already. I was remorseful and humbled. It took me 2 weeks to assure my sister that I could serve her as she needed, not as I thought prudent. I once had a palliative care patient with colorectal cancer who had survived 2 years longer than his prognosis. He and his wife had no doubts about how this had been accomplished. The power of positive thinking. I dropped in to see Ernie one day, and it was obvious to me that he only had a few more days to live. I asked Ernie, "Are you afraid?" His face changed to a scowl, and he said with scant air and energy that he had left, "What is wrong with you people? I have nothing to be afraid of. This is just my body purging toxins." In their 30 years together, this couple had never raised their voices to each other in anger. Yet in my arrogance, I wanted to say to them, pushing death away is denying the life that is here right now. Time is running out for meaningful conversations. They knew what they needed. They had successfully supported each other for 30 years. Their denial had kept Ernie alive and them unified for an extra precious 2 years. Ernie died peacefully 2 days later. Being with suffering or dying requires us to reach in order to reach a patient or loved one to properly manage pain, nausea, fear, anxiety, and conflict. Practicing the principle of caring presence can help. You know, I'm always surprised by the different ideas people have of what we chaplains do. We are seen varyingly as nice, but kind of useless, unless someone wants to pray. We're assumed to be religious and probably evangelical, and patients sometimes see us as angels of death when we walk into the room and they freak out when we introduce ourselves. Most people have no idea how chaplains are trained. Many believe we're just told by some church to go preach to the sick. In fact, we don't preach at all. We must learn to systematically analyze theologies, including our own. You may learn to translate ancient Greek or Hebrew and other sacred scriptures to understand the pitfalls of wrong translations that so often contribute to dangerous and harmful beliefs. We study history, spiritual contemplation, trauma psychology, and if it's a good seminary, we learn to question everything we believe in about God, religion, or our own spirituality. And yes, we learn to preach, and we definitely pray that we will make it through seminary and residency. We exit that tunnel with a good sense of what we actually do believe in, especially with respect to how or if God acts in the world. If God is good and also all-powerful, why does that same God allow the terrible suffering we all see every day? And injustice? We are subjected to rigorous, supervised clinical training where we are forced, like psychologists and social workers, to chart, question, and analyze our projections, assumptions, biases, and blind spots, and have our own weaknesses exposed gleefully by our peers and supervisors. We're expected to show up to any patient on any unit from any faith tradition, socioeconomic status, nationality, and language. And with all, we go as deeply into their emotional and spiritual recesses as possible. We chaplains use clinical, psychological, and theological resources to build and carry out a plan of care for each human being we serve. We're trained and expected to sit in the presence of any suffering, chaos, conflict, diagnosis, prognosis, psychosis, or dementia, and to walk into any unknown situation and be a compassionate, caring presence who can assess the core spiritual needs of the suffering, and then utilize psycho-spiritual interventions to help bring about healing or reconciliation. But with each and every person, we utilize the ministry of caring presence. We attempt to focus our whole being, in spite of anything going on personally or clinically, to be present at the deepest possible level in attentive caring, to elicit memories, feelings, desires, spiritual needs, and self-love. We use active listening, systems and power difference theory, psychodynamic and transpersonal psychology theories, but always, always, always caring presence, which becomes almost our ground of being. Now, ground of being has both specific and broad theological meanings. It is for some another name for God. It is the sacred space, the void, the source. It is Christ presence, the Great Spirit, Buddha mind, the Hindu Brahman. It is a space of possibility, patience, and love, useful for anyone because it has harmonizing and comforting effects on other. One primary responsibility during my UCSF clinical residency was as dedicated clergy in pediatric oncology. One day I was asked to intervene with a 12-year-old boy being treated long-term on that unit. He had been shot in the abdomen by a friend. This little man now had PTSD, colostomy, suffered through frequent surgeries, could not walk, and was acting out his suffering. Tommy was variously aloof or belligerent. Nurses, social workers, and doctors could not reach him, and it was interfering with his recovery. I spent the first 30 minutes of my initial visit sitting quietly on the cold white linoleum floor at his bedside, where he chatted on his cell phone to a friend, studiously and very impressively avoiding me, ignoring me. I just waited. When Tommy finally acknowledged my existence, I shared with him that I too had been shot once by a friend. I allowed him to ask me questions until he proudly withdrew from between his sheets a picture of the gun that had forever changed his life. Did I overshare with Tommy? Maybe. But the candor and spiritual leveling worked. This fierce young man began allowing me to hold his hands as he went into his wound changes. What is caring presence? It is patience. It is vulnerability. Another major responsibility at UC was the adult transplant unit and ICU. I had a really fascinating liver recipient who was paranoid and terrified because of the crazy immune suppressors, anti-rejection drugs, steroids, and pain meds he was taking. His third day post-surgery, the nurses called me because Barry was acting very weird, crazy. Barry thought his walker was a hamburger. Seriously. Now, how should I assess this patient's core spiritual need at the time? Mostly he was scared and really confused, and he was pathologically hungry. What should caring presence be for Barry? Well, treat his phenomenology as his reality. Flow with the chaos and validate temporarily crazy, objective unreality just long enough to shift his awareness. I asked him how much he really wanted to eat a 3-foot hamburger made of metal and plastic. In that moment, he saw the true nature of his meal. Stop. Breathe. Validate the person, not the behavior, and love. Ocean Beach, San Francisco. It's a very dangerous place to swim. Gloria had lost 2 of her children to the undertow, pulled out to sea. The love of her life, her childhood sweetheart, Her husband, Joe, had valiantly tried to save the two boys. Joe now lies down the hall in the transplant ICU. A ventilator is mechanically forcing his lungs to inflate and deflate with air that no longer makes any difference to his brain. Gloria's world is shattered. She still has two children left, both under the age of 12. She wants a miracle. She cries, "How could God do this to us? God, where are you? How can this be real?" I don't know how many times I've heard that in ERs and ICUs. How can this be real? No, this is not real. That cannot be happening. The doctors around the massive, crowded conference table have given up on Joe, but they don't know how to tell Gloria that her husband has no chance of recovery. Privately, they've all agreed limited resources should go to someone with a chance of survival. The doctors are asking her now to make the decision and remove her beloved husband, her children's father, from life support. In her mind, to kill him. What could ministry of caring presence mean for Gloria? It meant listening, listening, listening. And then risk alienating the many doctors and patient care managers, maybe 15 clinicians at all, a wall of white to the patient's family. They could ban me from future care conferences when I spoke up and stepped on holy medical toes. The longer the white coat, the greater the transgression. Ministry of caring presence had to be clinical, but compassionate, pastoral advocacy for all. Caring was advocating for the dignity of an unresponsive patient and tormented position of the doctors who cared deeply but felt powerless. I knew they hated to admit defeat, but didn't know what to do. Behind their lab coats and stethoscopes, the doctors too were hurting. Caring presence meant listening and interpreting doctor speak to someone in emotional shock and unfathomable grief and fear who hadn't slept in days. How? Stop the conversation. Look directly into exhausted, dark brown eyes, those abysses of suffering and fear, and into the shattered spirit behind those dark brown eyes and ask, would Joe want to exist this way? Gloria, your doctors hate to give up. Their lives are dedicated to care and hope. They have done everything in their power to bring Joe back to you, but they can't, Gloria, they can't. If God wants to perform a miracle, he won't need that ventilator. Manuel, he was an ex-con out of San Quentin in Pelican Bay. He had tattoos everywhere. He also had rheumatoid arthritis so severely he was twisted in spine and every limb. He couldn't bear to be touched. Even sound hurt. He had sepsis. He had liver disease. He was obnoxious to staff because he was difficult. Manuel was asleep when I arrived. I pulled up my chair quietly, and I waited. For a long time, I waited. I watched him and channeled love to his twisted body and psyche. He awoke, and opening his eyes, he said, after a long, silent assessment of me, "Who the are you?" "Who the do you think I am?" "I'm your hospice chaplain, Bob." We hit it off, and I served him until he died. Ministry of caring presence for Manuel, spiritual leveling, respect, silence, candor. Always, always, always compassionate listening, actively recreating the reality or unreality of the other in your own words, then questions to elicit more remembering and reconciliation of a life lived, a loss, a fear, a tragedy, a dying. As a hospice and hospital chaplain, I've witnessed so many deaths. Each individual, each family is different and unique. Each death is uniquely demanding and uniquely sacred, requiring a unique presence. There was the amazing globe-trotting Sylvia, 97-year-old, all-enduring Holocaust survivor. She just couldn't let go. So I asked her 60-year-old son, David, it doesn't matter, her name's changed, who had not yet begun to acknowledge her imminent death and his loss. I asked him, have you told your mom it is okay to let go? Have you told her that you will be okay? And her only son assured his mother he would miss her, but he had her strength in him, and he would be fine in time. David gave his mother permission to die. After days of fighting, now within 2 minutes, she took her final gentle breath and slid gracefully from her body. Her son wept in grief, softened by wonder at the beauty, the peace, and the speed of her passing. Caring presence allowed me to see that Sylvia needed permission to depart. Notice that in none of these examples is there any preaching or saving of souls. I had one patient who, in his final days, confided in me his treason and war crimes. He had carried this burden alone for over half a century. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He knew that was between himself and eternity. He needed only the presence of an unjudging human witness. What he needed was simple, caring presence. Ministry of caring presence means humility and love. It means being present in love, with love, for love, and from love. It means focusing all your awareness through the lens of service, in the moment, through love. This is especially relevant with dementia. Nothing is more important for late-stage Alzheimer's patient, for instance, than to be precisely in their moments. What he says is his truth. Repeat it back to him. Then direct his thoughts from there. You can have amazing conversations with the highly demented if you stay in her moment. It's possible to follow the trail from just a few of her words into her mind and into her past to reach and comfort her, to assuage the fear. The most common mistake is attempting to educate a loved one with dementia about what is real or what is true or not real, as if it was for her own good. So the elixir of caring presence has a very simple recipe. 1 part focused presence, 1 part love, and 1 part simple syrup of surrender. Strive, if you can, to look through the other's eyes and the eyes of a greater presence of love. Listen, listen, listen. Love, love, love. Thank you. Bless you.
Tough act to follow, huh? But now it's time for the offertory segment of the program. We won't be passing baskets, but there will be baskets at the doors as you leave. If you accidentally drop your wallet in one of those baskets, don't worry, we'll get it back to you next week sometime. And I know you are making the assumption that since Steve left, you won't have to sit through offertory humor, but you do. As I get my glasses. So towards the end of the services, the minister asked the congregation, how many of you have forgiven your enemies? 80% held up their hands. The minister then repeated the question. All responded this time except one small elderly lady. Mrs. Jones, are you not willing to forgive your enemies? I don't have any, she said, smiling sweetly. Mrs. Jones, that's very unusual. How old are you? Well, I'm 98, she replied. Oh, Mrs. Jones, would you please come down in front and tell us how a person can live 98 years and not have an enemy in the world? The little sweetheart of a lady trotted down the aisle, faced the congregation, and said, it's easy. I outlived them all. We'll have some offertory music.
Thank you, Severin and Michael. Please mumble along with me from behind your masks the affirmation of gratitude. Let us be grateful when we are able to give, for many do not have that privilege. Let us be grateful for all those who share their gifts, for we are enriched by their giving. And let us also be grateful for our needs so that we may experience the generosity of others.
All right, we're going to do Come and Go With Me. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound.
In closing, let us remember that this church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all of our differences and beneath all of our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together, in spite of time and death and the space between the stars. We pause in silent witness to that unity.
May the blessing of love be upon you. May love's peace abide with you. May love's presence illuminate your hearts now and forevermore. So be it. Amen. Shalom, salam, namaste, and blessed be. And now our service truly begins.